I'm willing to pay any price, even my life, but your part of the bargain is that you must show me God. No, he answered, I cannot show you God or enable you to see God, because God is not an object that can be seen.
Namaste, world raisers. Sabine and Roger here, and today we're going to watch talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi.
Awesome. I can't wait for this one. I actually know very little about Sri Ramana Maharshi other than he's a realized being, but I never really dived into his teachings until now. So let's do it together.
If we look on the self as the ego, then we become the ego. If as the mind, we become the mind. If as the body, we become the body. It is the thought which builds up sheaths in so many ways. The shadow on the water is found to be shaking. Can anyone stop the shaking of the shadow? If it should cease to shake, you would not notice the water, but only the light. Similarly, to take no notice of the ego and its activities, but see only the light behind. The ego is the I thought. The true I is the self. Realization is already there. The state free from thoughts is the only real state. There is no such action as realization. Is there anyone who is not realizing the self? Does anyone deny his own existence? Speaking of realization, it implies two selves. The one to realize, the other to be realized. What is not already realized is sought to be realized. Once we admit our existence, how is it that we do not know the self? Oh, because of the thoughts, the mind. Quite so. It is the mind that stands between and veils our happiness. How do we know that we exist? If you say because of the world around us, then how do you know that you existed in deep sleep? How to get rid of the mind? Is it the mind that wants to kill itself? The mind cannot kill itself. So your business is to find the real nature of the mind. Then you will know that there is no mind. When the self is sought, the mind is nowhere. Abiding in the self, one need not worry about the mind. How to get rid of fear? What is fear? It is only a thought. If there is anything beside the self, there is reason to fear. Who sees the second? First, the ego arises and sees objects as external. If the ego does not rise, the self alone exists, and there is no second. For anything external to oneself implies the seer within. Seeking it there will arise no doubt, no fear. Not only fear, all other thoughts centered around the ego will disappear along with it. This method seems to be quicker than the usual one of cultivating qualities alleged necessary for salvation. All bad qualities center around the ego. When the ego is gone, realization results by itself. There are neither good nor bad qualities in the self. The self is free from all qualities. Qualities pertain to the mind only. It is beyond quality. If there is unity, there will also be duality. The numeral 1 gives rise to other numbers. The truth is neither 1 nor 2. It is as it is. The difficulty is to be in the thought-free state. Reality is simply the loss of the ego. Destroy the ego by seeking its identity. Because the ego is no entity, it will automatically vanish and reality will shine forth by itself. This is the direct method, whereas all other methods are done only retaining the ego. In those paths there arise so many doubts, and the eternal question remains to be tackled finally. But in this method, the final question is the only one, and it is raised from the very beginning. no sadhanas are necessary for engaging in this quest.
Have you seen God? I asked. And if you have, can you enable me to see him? I am willing to pay any price, even my life, but your part of the bargain is that you must show me God. No, he answered. I cannot show you God or enable you to see God, because God is not an object that can be seen. God is the subject. He is the seer. Don't concern yourself with objects that can be seen. Find out who the seer is. He also added, You alone are God, as if to rebuke me for looking for a God who is outside and apart from me. At the conclusion of his words, he looked at me, and as he gazed into my eyes, my whole body began to tremble and shake. A thrill of nervous energy shot through my body. My nerve endings felt as if they were dancing, and my hair stood on end. Within me, I became aware of the spiritual heart. This is not the physical heart. It is, rather, the source and support of all that exists. Within this heart, I saw or felt something like a closed bud. It was very shiny and bluish. With the Maharshi looking at me, and with myself in a state of inner silence, I felt this bud open and bloom. I use the word bud, but this is not an exact description. It would be more correct to say that something that felt bud-like opened and bloomed within me in the heart. And when I say heart, I don't mean that the flowering was located in a particular place in the body. This heart of my heart, was neither inside the body nor out of it. I can't give a more exact description of what happened. The keystone of the Maharshi's teaching is his self-inquiry, or Atma-Vishara, his infallible direct path to self-realization, coupled with total devotional surrender to God, Self, or Guru. Broadly speaking, Sri Bhagavan tells us that the immortal Self, or Satchitananda, or pure existence consciousness awareness bliss, is already there inherent in each of us. The difficulty is we do not recognize that, our true nature, or essential I-amness, because it is veiled and obscured by many latent tendencies and habits of the egotistic mind, which act as a mirror and project a dream of the world, the body, and the mind. Our identification with the mind and body is the chief reason for our failure to know ourselves as we really are. Through persistent self-inquiry, devotion, and surrender of the egotistic mind to God or the Satguru in the spiritual heart, this obscuration and identification is gradually and gracefully removed until the immortal self is realized. That is the full power of absolute consciousness and is known. The world is seen as real because the substrate is perceived to be as Brahman. In January 1938, Somerset Maugham, the British novelist, visited Ramanasramam for a few hours. The brief contact he had with Bhagavan inspired Maugham so much he decided to use him as the model for a fictional guru in The Razor's Edge, his masterpiece which was published a few years later in 1944. Maugham also wrote a non-fiction account of his visit in an essay entitled The Saint, which was published 20 years after the event in 1958. The following account, which is taken from this essay, records Maugham's impressions of this meeting with Bhagavan. He uttered a few words of cordial greeting and sat on the ground not far from the pallet on which I lay. After the first few minutes, during which his eyes with a gentle benignity rested on my face, he ceased to look at me, but, with a sidelong stare of peculiar fixity, gazed, as it were, over my shoulder. His body was absolutely still, but now and then one of his feet tapped lightly on the earthen floor. He remained thus, motionless, for perhaps 15 minutes, and they told me later that he was concentrating in meditation upon me. Then he came to, if I may so put it, and again looked at me. He asked me if I wished to say anything to him, or ask any question. I was feeling weak and ill, and said so, whereupon he smiled and said, "Silence is also conversation." He turned his head away slightly, and resumed his concentrated meditation, again looking, as it were, over my shoulder. No one said a word. The other persons in the hut, standing by the door, kept their eyes riveted upon him. After another 15 minutes, he got up, bowed, smiled farewell, and, slowly leaning on his stick, he limped out of the hut, followed by his disciples.
There is no greater mystery than this. Ourselves being the reality, we seek to gain reality. We think that there is something hiding our reality and that it must be destroyed before the reality is gained. It is ridiculous. A day will dawn when you will yourself laugh at your past efforts. That which will be on the day you laugh is also here and now. So it's a great game of pretending. Yes. In Yoga Vashishta it is said, what is real is hidden from us, but what is false is revealed as true. We are actually experiencing the reality only. Still, we do not know it. Is it not a wonder of wonders? The quest, who am I, is the axe with which to cut off the ego.
Wow. Whew. This is one of my favorite videos I think I've ever seen. It was absolutely put together so well. Yeah, just the slideshow. I've never seen that many images of him. Yeah, just amazing, right? Just being in that state. I'm at a loss for words. So yeah, just his teachings are just, so profound, right? So self-inquiry, right? It's the biggest thing. It's like no sadhana is complete without it. You got to get to the core. You really got to investigate. What is the ego? What is the I? And then seeing the I, as the psychological construct, and you could go beyond it, right? So it's not the mind, it's the ground of the mind. So the context of the ground, or the context of the mind, and everything appearing to the mind, is just an appearance. So, I love it when he said, how there's no distinction, right? You got to surrender onto God, guru, or self, right? So you can get there, right? So we can end the debates of, what do you surrender and what do you need to worship, right? Yeah, so God, guru, if you have a realized guru, perfect, right? Or self, or your inner guru, right? So many paths, but ultimately, you have to investigate and inquire into that I thought, the ego, right?
Or surrender to a doorknob.
Yes, surrender to a doorknob. I had one teacher who expressed that story from Alcoholics Anonymous, and some of these people in Alcoholics Anonymous, they have a real hard time with the word God, right? So but you have to surrender, onto, a God of your understanding, right? So in that sense, it's just about a power beyond yourself, right? So of course, in that sense, whatever we think about God is really just a conceptualization until we've realized it. So you could surrender onto anything as long as you're perceiving it as a power greater than yourself, right? Because everything is God in reality. So it's all about the mind. Everything is the mind. It's like our mind is the whole universe, right? But we're limited in these by dualistic perception. It's limited identity. So we really need to go within. So I love these talks. Very, very similar to Nisargadatta, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So they were contemporaries, and self-inquiry, go within. So beautiful. I almost want to do it as just a meditation, just listen.
Mm.
So I kept closing my eyes, and then I'd have to open them because I didn't want to miss the images.
Me too. Me too. It's really hard to keep the eyes open.
Yeah. I love the story when the lady was speaking, telling the story of, of just him looking at her, right?
I didn't quite understand that. What was that all about?
And then she had a profound realization where her body started, twitching, and then felt the light. So she had some sort of spiritual experience just by being in his presence, right? So not...
Oh, that's why he said being... Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So not as profound as that, but I was getting into some blissful, peaceful states just seeing him, right? Just seeing him and listening to those words.
Do you know the significance of the tiger? I know that Tibetan Buddhist deities are sitting on tigers too, or wearing tiger skin, or...
No, I don't know too much about the significance.
Maybe you know?
Yeah, maybe you guys know. Let us know in the comments what the significance is of his tiger. I do remember there is some teachings of, lamas and yogis when they would go and meditate in the forest, that they would sit on, a lion or a tiger or some sort of predator's skin because it would keep everything else away. Like no snakes are going to come up, because they'll smell the tiger, right? So that's kind of how I understood it. Well, like a snake.
Hopefully not anymore after...
No, there's going to be a scent to the pelt. I'm not saying like not a decaying carcass smell.
Oh, okay.
But just the skin, the pelt, right? So maybe they keep snakes. So not a naga snake, but an actual venomous snake. Keep the I don't know, some dangerous animals away. But it's kind of how I understand it, but correct me if I'm wrong, please. But yeah, very deep. I'm going to have to listen to this one again just to absorb. Yes. Sri Ramana Maharshi. Loved it. So if you loved this video as much as we did, please hit that like button. And remember to subscribe. It really, really helps the channel. Don't forget to, go watch the full version of this video again and again. We'll leave a link in the description. It was that good. And remember, raise yourself.
And raise the world. Thank you so much, everyone. And a very special thank you to all our members. We love you.
Peace.